and good guys. Republican strategist Ed Rollins, he served as White House political director under President Reagan and recently chaired Mike Huckabee's presidential campaign. New York Daily News columnist Errol Louis, also the host of the WWRL morning show here in New York, a member of the editorial board at the Daily News as well. It's good that they're keeping you busy, Errol. And Robert Zimmerman, Democratic National Committeeman, Democratic strategist, Senator Barack Obama supporter, rabid partisan. Good to have you with us.
Thanks for that warm introduction.
Well, you know, things are just going boffo down in Washington today. Is there going to be a bailout? Should there be a bailout?
One, there should be a bailout. Two, I believe it will take place. My feeling is by this weekend.
Do you believe, as a Democratic National Committeeman, that it's John McCain stopping the bailout at this point?
Well, let's look at it this way, Lou. On Wednesday, Senator Richard Shelby, the senior member of the Banking Committee, was saying there would be a deal. And of course, the deal, there was a bipartisan agreement with the White House in place before John McCain's plane touched down. And now, of course, we're seeing political theater. And that's, so I think...
Very rare occurrence in Washington, D.C.
No, but the stakes are very high. And this is perhaps...
But high, you know, how high are they, Ed? Should there be a bailout?
Well, I think there's a serious question about that, and it's not John McCain, it's the House Republicans. And the House Republicans who basically, most of them sit in safe seats and don't think think they've spent way more money than they should have and feel no obligation to this president who's going out the door in 116 days. Don't know Paulson, he doesn't know how to negotiate with him, and all of a sudden they have this crisis in which for the next 2 or 3 terms they're going to be forced to give up everything else that they have because of this bailout for a bunch of people in Wall Street. And I think they want to be at the table, and I think what happened is the Democrat leadership and some of the Republicans who were negotiating got ahead of the troops.
Well, the troops, and when we think of the troops, I mean, should we be thinking of congressmen and women as troops in this thing? Because there are very real concerns here, aren't there, Errol?
Oh, absolutely. Underneath it all, sure. I've been trying to interview economists from across the spectrum, and there's an almost unanimous feeling that what we don't know is so much greater than the pressure that's being applied politically that it just doesn't make sense to leap in there and to start making decisions that we're going to be paying for and dealing with for generations. And I mean, nobody knows what the true worth is of these toxic mortgages. There hasn't been any serious discussion about how to discover that. What there really has been is an almost exclusively political discussion that does not, and the people who aren't at the table are the homeowners who are still marching down the road to foreclosure, and the people in the real economy, in the real world.
It seems, Robert, there's very little effort on the part of people who otherwise would be rigorous intellectually to create discrete lines of information here. How many subprime mortgage homeowners are there who are facing default and who have been foreclosed upon? And how much money did they lose as a result of that home? Did they actually have money invested, that is, in a down payment? And if so, they've lost a home but not a house or their investment, and that creates a different category of, if you will, a victim in this. How many people are looking at a house in which they have home equity? They have put their life savings into it, and that's a different category, a discrete different category. And it seems that if we're worried about what is happening in the credit markets, as obviously, and I talked with people this morning who are very worried about it and who are very knowledgeable. But the reality is we're not seeing these discrete categories and tranches, if you will, of thinking and issues and a relationship amongst them. And the American people are being treated as if we're all some kind of great unwashed, not deserving of the attention of these elected officials and these Treasury secretaries and these Fed chairmen, and we're really too stupid to understand quite what's going on. I'm a little sick of it, and when you tell me we need a bailout, I have sort of a chemical reaction, and I say, not until you explain to me why you're going to spend $700 billion of taxpayer money are you going to get a dime. And I don't respect any elected official who is up there pushing for this bailout right now without knowing what the heck he's talking about or she's talking about and not explaining it to the American people.
Well, as an American citizen and a taxpayer and one who's going to be burdened with the debt of this bailout, I'm particularly sensitive to it. I think as all Americans are, and I've got to tell you, and I spent a good part of today on the phone with a great many members of Congress. And I have a lot of respect for many of them for how profoundly they're studying this issue and how they're trying to resolve this. But the reality is, we are facing a crisis due to a stunning lack of irresponsible policies.
Anybody at this table by saying, okay, tell me precisely what the issue is that we're going to resolve with $700 billion. Tell me specifically how the bottleneck in the credit markets is going to be broken with $700 billion. Maybe somebody should also explain why with $500 billion being injected into the banking system by the Federal Reserve, have we not solved the liquidity issue? Why have we not been able to resolve that issue?
That's the problem. And no disrespect to the troops who are members of Congress, and no disrespect, I know you meant to the unwashed, the American taxpayers. But at the end of the day, there's certain people trying to put this together.
When I talk about the unwashed, I'm talking about the attitude of condescending elected officials
and I'm not being
and these Treasury officials
I'm not being
talking about you, me, and everybody else in this country.
I'm not being condescending to the members of Congress. What I'm simply saying, though, it's a very complicated process. And when in an entire year, they have 13 appropriation bills to pass and they can't get it passed.
That's because in part they don't read them.
All of a sudden, you have a 2.5-page document that is going to basically allocate half of a federal budget, and nobody knows whether it's going to fix the problem. Nobody knows it's the beginning of the problem. And as I've said repeatedly on this show, these things take time. And what everybody is saying, trust me, trust me, trust me. And no, just let me finish. Trust me, trust me, trust me. And the president last night said doom and gloom was coming. To ordinary people out there, they're not sure it's doom and gloom. What they're sure of is if you spend $500 billion of my money, the gloom is coming back to me.
I want to bring up the issue that underlies all of this. And when the President of the United States goes on primetime television and speaks to the American people, and as you suggest, basically advances a reason for everyone to go into a dark corner and suck their thumbs.
Or take the money out of a bank.
Or whatever. When Congress makes its great statements, none of these, or John McCain or Barack Obama says a thing on this. The fact is the American people don't have a reason in the world to trust a single one of these elected officials. We're going to be back in just one moment. We're going to discuss how anything can get done and whether or not anything should be done with a government none of us trust right now, or at least not many of us. We'll be right back. You wanted to respond to what I had said about the failure, the reason we don't trust this government, these elected officials.
On this, we're in complete agreement. No one holds the Bush administration in more contempt than I do, to the point of I think they're being a criminally negligent administration.
I said Democrats and Republicans.
But I'm talking about the White House for a moment. And I think but the bigger issue here, Lou, is either we accept...
respond to what I said.
did. Okay, it's correct. The bigger issue here is either we accept the fact that we're facing a crisis in our fiscal, in the markets, or we're not.
Tell me what the crisis is.
The crisis is that we run the risk of credit drying up.
Says who?
Well, apparently there are a great many experts, economic experts who've come forward. There are a great many fiscal experts and congressional
recently,
leaders.
100 economists wrote a letter to Congress saying, don't move too fast, because this is
That's different from not acknowledging there's a crisis here.
Okay, I surrender.
Well, look, there are crises that can be fixed, or that have to be fixed in 48 or 72 hours, or whatever it is the White House has been pushing. And then there are crises like this that I think can actually be resolved over weeks with open hearings, with economists brought in to actually talk, to educate the public.
What time frame
I think
would you put in this
suspending
crisis,
or
Errol?
interrupting the debates is a huge mistake.
May I say that I really resent the idea, and not what you're saying, but the implication in this entire process is A, that the American people aren't smart enough to know what the heck is happening. B, that it's unnecessary for our elected officials to communicate what is happening to them. Thirdly, that the people who presided over the creation of this crisis are suddenly smart enough to know what to do about it. I mean, this is an absurdity. And we talk about political theater. The national media plays into it, because now the question is whether there should be a bailout. The national media has made the question, how will the bailout be configured? When will it take place? And we put our cameras and our reporters surrounding this political theatrical stage and buy into the process.
But there's so much misinformation. Everybody says we put this in, we think we fixed the problem. Ed Gillespie, the counselor of the president, walks out tonight and says, we may even make money on this $1 trillion we're investing. We don't even know how much we don't know how much we're going to make for this. Don't think we're just putting money in, we may be taking money out. That is just total BS. And I think that what Earl is talking about, why is there the rush to judgment? Because the market may drop a little bit tomorrow. If it drops a little bit tomorrow, we'll be back up on Monday. That's the way it's been going for the last 2 weeks.
Congressman Brad Sherman say his great concern is that Wall Street will manipulate the market to create the climate in which there would be rapid movement on this quote-unquote bailout. Gentlemen, I have to leave it there. We're out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Robert Zimmerman, Errol Louis, thank you. Ed Rollins, thank you. Our poll, 96% of you do not believe for a minute that any bailout would really limit executive compensation. Thanks for being with us. Please join us here tomorrow. For all of us here, we thank you for watching. Good night from New York. The Election Center begins right now with John Roberts.